At that public school in the inner city, before the first student even walked through the gate, Donatida was already there. Wearing a simple uniform and a messy bun, she wielded the mop as if holding an invisible trophy. She wasn't just a cleaning assistant. She was the guardian of the hallways, the invisible caretaker of the school routine. The sound of the bucket of dirty water was the sound of duty being performed with dignity. Donatida didn't make a fuss. She was one of those humble women who believed more in doing things than in showing off. She passed through the corners of the school like a light breeze, present but barely noticed. Cleaning the school was her silent mission, carried out meticulously and without complaint, even on the most difficult days. She knew her work wasn't plastered on the wall, but it was what sustained her world. She cleaned the bathrooms with the same dedication others would give to a meeting room. "A clean place is a sign of respect," she would say softly, as if she were educating even the tiles. Some might think it was an exaggeration, but for her, keeping that floor sparkling was a way of teaching, even without teaching. That was where her feminine strength lay, doing a lot with almost nothing. While the school was still asleep, Donatida was already daydreaming. She dreamed of her son's future, of the high school graduation she herself never had, of a life where her hard work wouldn't go unnoticed. She was a humble mother, the kind who makes work the greatest message of love a child can receive. But until then, no one had seen her that way. Some teachers greeted Donatida with a hurried wave, others didn't even notice her. She was like the sound of a ceiling fan, present but ignored in the rush of classes. Only one or two teachers remembered her name. For most, she was simply the cleaning lady. Invisible motherhood began there, amid brooms and averted glances. Interestingly, those who respected her most were the oldest. They knew the school only worked because there were women like her supporting its foundation. But among the newcomers, the look was almost always automatic, impersonal, as if her presence were part of the building, not the team. It was a portrait of society where decent work is seen but rarely valued. Even so, Donatida never fought back. She tucked her mother's pride into her uniform pocket and carried on. She was discreet, but she saw everything. Who was grateful, who was ignored, who was mocking. "Everyone cleans what they can," she said to herself, scrubbing the tiles while listening to conversations that never included her. And that hurt more than any difficult-to-remove dirt. The students, for the most part, didn't really see her either. They knew she was there, but they didn't know who she was. They called her the cleaning lady, as if that were all. Little did they know that behind that apron lay an inspiring woman, a woman raising a brilliant son on her own, but no one knew that part of the story. Yet, Matthias was the opposite of what anyone expected of a cleaner's son. Silent and attentive, he walked around with his books clutched as if carrying a shield. While the others ran around during recess, he sought refuge in the school library. He knew that knowledge was his chance, and he studied like someone trying to escape a destiny he didn't choose. He had an old notebook, its pages already loose but filled with scribbled dreams. He never skipped class, even with a cold or tiredness. Teachers praised him, but few connected his dedication to the story behind it. He was just the quiet kid in class, though his mind teemed with ideas. Matthias wasn't just smart, he was determined. Some classmates, however, found it amusing. They mocked him, saying he only got good grades because he wanted to be the pride of the school. Others commented maliciously, "That guy only studies to avoid his mother's bucket and mop." It was the kind of school bullying that doesn't scream, but hurts. And Matthias, even though it hurt, remained silent. Donatida noticed everything. She knew her son was suffering, but she also knew his strength. She always said, "Son, let them talk. Those who clean the floor can also step onto big stages." And these words became the foundation of their family's resilience. While the world tried to diminish him, she pushed him, albeit invisibly, upward. It was during recess that the venom oozed out in the form of jokes. When Matthias opened the snack Donatida had lovingly wrapped, someone would blurt out, That one must have come with the cleaning bucket. There was a snicker, a pat on the shoulder, and the boy pretended not to hear. But he did. And how? It stuck like a stubborn stain. Once someone left a floor cloth on his desk. Instead of confronting him, Mathias took a deep breath, calmly removed the cloth, and sat down. The gesture bothered him more than any shout. It was as if he were saying, "They can try to dirty me, but they won't stain me." Inside, of course, it hurt. But he already knew. Dignity at work isn't an insult, it's a shield. School bullying sometimes comes disguised as a joke, and when you're the child of someone who cleans floors for a living, the burden is doubled. Mathias learned to swallow his shame and turn it into fuel. They don't know what it's like to get up at 5 to help their mother sort out uniforms that smell like candida, he thought, and he carried on. Donatilla noticed when her son arrived home quieter. Sometimes she wanted to go into the living room and demand respect, but she held back. She knew she needed to strengthen him from within. She kept repeating, "You will win without humiliating anyone." It was the kind of teaching that doesn't come from books, but that shapes a man. And Mathias was being forged. Donatilla watched her son study late into the night, even after a full day of work. Sometimes she'd doze on the couch with her uniform still dirty, but she'd wake up smiling to see Mathias hunched over his notebook. He doesn't have much, but he's focused," she'd murmur, adjusting her apron. That boy was her prayer answered, even without having asked for it out loud. There was no study table, just a crooked chair in the kitchen. Books came from donations or from school trash that she respectfully recycled. Still, Mathias made summaries, highlighted words, dreamed, and she, silently, dreamed along. A mother's pride wasn't measured in pretty words. It was measured in the sparkle in his eyes when he said, "I passed." She never understood formulas or essays, but she knew how to recognize effort. She kept her son's report cards like someone collecting invisible medals. Sometimes she'd tell her neighbor, "Mathias is going to be something, you'll see." And even when they said, "Everyone says that about their son," she smiled, because deep down she knew he was already something. Their home was small, but love was there. It was in every piece of clothing laundered with care, in every simple snack packed with care. Donatilla couldn't provide designer sneakers, but she was there for them. She couldn't afford prep classes, but she was there for them. And it was in this fertile ground of love and family resilience that Mathias grew, strong, even among the rocks. The end of the year arrived like a long-awaited sigh. At school, preparations for elementary school graduation buzzed through the hallways, and there was Mathias, not only among the graduates, but as the class's standout performer. The principal, moved by his performance, made a point of inviting him to represent the class with a speech. The news left Donatilla in shock. She, who had always gone unnoticed, would now see her son take the stage, microphone in hand, becoming the voice of a generation. She scrambled to borrow some clothes, washed the whitest sneakers she could, and laid out Mathias's uniform with the same zeal as someone preparing an altar. It wasn't just a graduation, it was an everyday miracle. The night before, they barely slept. He went over his speech, she reminisced. "Remember when you cried because you didn't have a new pencil?" she said. "And now you're going to speak in front of everyone." Mathias smiled shyly, but inside, a flame burned. It was more than a ceremony. It was a public recognition of the journey they'd made together. At school, the chairs were lined up, the balloons hung, the stage set. But at home, the greatest decoration was hope. Donatilla prepared her son's lunch as always, but with trembling hands. "Everything will be fine," she said, even with her heart racing. And it was there, in that simple early morning coffee, that the most important night of their lives began. Graduation day dawned radiantly, but with clouds ready to form in Mathias's heart. As usual, Donatilla arrived early to work. Her blue uniform, already a little worn, contrasted with the festive decorations of the schoolyard. As she scrubbed the bathroom floor, some students passed by laughing, Look there, the speaker's mother cleaning the toilet." The sentence cut through the air like a silent slap. Matthias, who had just arrived in his rented dress shirt, heard every syllable. He froze for a second, invitation in hand, chest tight. He pretended it wasn't about him, but his heart knew it was. Sometimes the worst shame isn't our own, it's the one they try to inflict on the one we love. Other classmates laughed, perhaps without malice, perhaps out of ignorance. But that laughter stung. It was as if his mother's efforts were being wiped away along with the soap on the floor. Matthias pressed his lips together, looking at the floor, the same floor his mother was cleaning. He felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and helplessness, and for a moment he considered giving up on his speech. Meanwhile, on the other side of the court, Donna Cida continued her work with dignity in her eyes. Had she heard the jokes? Maybe. Had she felt ashamed? Never. She knew this moment wasn't about her, it was about her son. And if she could speak to him right then, she would simply say, "Hold your head up. I clean the floor, but I've never bowed my head to anyone." The gym was packed. Parents with their phones ready, eager students, smiling teachers. Matthias, however, was silent. Sitting in the front row, he was adjusting his collar for the 5th time. His hands were sweating, his heart seemed to be pounding inside his chest. He was the evening speaker, but his voice, always his ally, was now threatening to fail. From the stage, he could see the glittering lights, the balloons, and the banner with the class's name. Matthias looked at everything, but saw little. The echo of the joke still danced in his mind. The pride of being a cleaning lady's son, which he had always carried firmly, now weighed down like a burden. For a moment, he considered feigning discomfort, not going up, disappearing. That's when he saw her. There in the back of the stands, sitting among mothers with expensive handbags and practiced smiles, was Donna Cida, simply dressed, her hair tied back, and a smile. Oh, that smile. It was small, but firm, as if to say, "Go, son, I'm here." She said nothing, but it said everything. It was the push Matthias needed. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and stood. Each step to the stage felt longer than all his school years combined. With each step, he carried the weight of bullying, of struggle, of his mother's invisibility. But he also carried the feminine strength that raised him, the quiet pride, and the certainty that that microphone was more than sound. It was a voice. It was repair. The microphone trembled between Matthias's fingers. The gym, which seconds before had seemed bustling with life, was now completely silent. Everyone waited for the class's star student to shine, but all he could think about was Donna Cida. He swallowed hard, adjusted the folded paper in his pocket, and tried to smile. His voice came out low. "Good evening, everyone." He began by thanking everyone, as protocol dictated, to the teachers, to the administration, to my colleagues, but it wasn't him there. He was a mold, a shadow. His gaze wandered around the audience, searching for something he couldn't even fathom. Emotion rose like a tide. A long, uncomfortable pause. A soft murmur began among the guests. Matthias lowered his eyes. For a second, everything seemed to fall apart. But then he looked back at the back of the court. Donna Cida was still there, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes brimming with tears, and that same small, resilient smile. It was as if she were saying, "Be who you are." And in that moment, Matthias breathed differently, deeply, resolutely. He put the paper away. He put down the script and looked straight at the audience. Shyness gave way to truth. "I was going to say something rehearsed," he began, his voice firmer, "but today I want to talk about where I came from and who brought me here." Tension turned to attention. The story, until then muffled, began to be told with the soul, and no one dared blink. Matthias took a deep breath. The silence on the court was now reverent. All eyes were on him, but he could only see one, his mother's. "Many here laughed at my mother for cleaning bathrooms," he said, his voice choked but firm. "But it was by cleaning floors that she cleared my path." The sentence fell like a thunderbolt, and no one dared laugh. "Every piece of cloth she wrung was a book I could open. Every extra hour she worked was an hour I could study." she continued. While many people here pretended not to see her, she was teaching me about dignity. The moving speech left even the most skeptical speechless. It was as if each syllable rubbed the soul of anyone who had ever mocked her. If I'm here today, it's because of her, for the woman who wakes before the sun and returns home after the moon, for her humble, strong mother, invisible to many, but a giant to me. The teary eyes weren't just his. It was the weight of truth touching even those who thought they already knew what success was. She taught me that dignity never stains the soul. There were no frills, only truth. And it is from truth that moving stories are born. Matthäus didn't give a speech to shine, he did it to illuminate, and by naming his mother there in front of everyone, he transformed that cleaning woman into the woman who inspires. The cleaning woman's son cleared the stage with words, and no one, absolutely no one, dared interrupt. For a few seconds, no one moved. The court hung in midair, as if time had stopped to digest what had just been said. Then, slowly, a timid round of applause began, and it turned into a standing ovation. Teachers, students, parents, even those who had laughed on the playground were now crying silently. It was impossible to continue the same after those words. The principal, normally reserved, was wiping away tears. A math teacher, known for being strict, applauded with teary eyes. Students who had previously ignored Matthäus now looked at him with genuine respect. It was more than public recognition, it was silent reparation. The cleaning lady's son had become a mirror. Donna Cida stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking, but her heart was beating steadily. Her eyes filled with tears, her face flushed. She didn't know where to put her hands. But when Matthäus stepped off the stage, she opened her arms as if she'd been waiting for that embrace all her life. And he came, complete, vulnerable, grateful. There, amid tears and applause, they sealed a moving story of love and resilience. There were no flowers, no prize, no trophy, but there was something greater, respect. For the first time, Donna Cida wasn't just the cleaning lady. She was the mother who inspired a son to honor his roots with courage. She was a symbol of feminine strength, of invisible motherhood finally coming to light. She was, finally, seen as a woman of transformation. There are speeches we memorize, and others we live. Matthäus's was one of the latter. It wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to liberate, and liberate it did. It freed his mother from anonymity, freed his colleagues from ignorance, freed Matthäus himself from the silence he'd carried for years. When truth comes from the ground, it rises straight to the heart. That night, no one left school the same way they entered. That moving story echoed in every corner of the gym, in the hallways, and even in the bathrooms Donna Cida cleaned. Because sometimes it's the invisible woman who teaches the greatest lesson. And that lesson is dignity, dignified work. Love without vanity, education and respect. How many humble mothers do you know who hold the world with their calloused hands and steady gaze? How many proud sons are out there with stories that deserve to be told but have never been heard? This is one of those stories that touches, transforms, and inspires. And if you've made it this far, it's because it touched you too. Now I want to know, have you ever met someone like this? Who taught you everything despite having so little? Who silenced the world with a simple and genuine gesture? Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of the value of simple things.